Hello, welcome to the Old Fliers. The surprise bombing of an unprepared Darwin on February 1942 was just 10 weeks after that of Pearl Harbor. Australia became a strategic responsibility of America. All Australian military combat units in the Southwest Pacific area were put under General Douglas MacArthur. The American 5th Air Force was formed, and the 380th Bomb Group, made up of 4 squadrons, was assigned to it. They flew B24 Consolidated Liberator bombers, which were commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Bill Miller. They were moved to the Northern Territory in April 1943 under operational command of Group Captain Wainwright of the Royal Australian Air Force. They operated out of Fenton and Manbulo airfields, a distance in from the coast. On the RAAF staff was Flight Lieutenant Burra, a former oil refinery engineer from Balikpapan on Borneo. He knew the Japanese were getting 50% of their lubricating oil, 60% of their aviation fuel from this one refinery. Some 7 million barrels a year, in fact. It was a high-value target. One problem: it was 1,300 miles north of Australia. Sinking ships in the harbour was going to be important, as that would clog the harbour up. On Friday, August 13, 1943, Liberators departed their bases for Darwin to refuel and brief. 11 aircraft then departed, 5 minutes apart, on the longest bombing mission in history, going hundreds of miles beyond enemy lines. Pilot Doug Craig, 23 years of age, in Shady Lady, would be the last over the target. On track, they entered severe thunderstorms and could only make minimal heading changes due to preservation of fuel. 2 B-24s, in fact, aborted due to this severe weather. These were in the days before weather radar assisted pilots to make choices. The B-24 Juarez whistle was first over target just before midnight and saw that the city wasn't blacked out. When Shady Lady arrived, the intercom between bombardier and pilot failed, requiring a second run at target. Flak and searchlights awaited. When the Australian photographer Flying Officer Len Ruston requested a third run, pilot Doug Craig declined. Those same storms awaited them on the way back, lightning so intense that they could read their maps by it. Fuel was quickly running out. They wouldn't make Darwin, let alone Fenton. Diverting to Drysdale was the only option, but that would take them over Timor in daylight. There were Zeros from Kopang Air Base in Timor. 2 Zeros did take off to greet them, and for an hour they arm wrestled before the Zeros broke off. Now breaking radio silence, they transmitted SOS and threw all heavy gear overboard. Just after 9 a.m, they made landfall in Western Australia, but still had 25 miles to go to Drysdale. Now running on fumes, whilst the engines were still working, they decided to land on mudflats adjacent to the ocean. They had been in the air for 16 hours 35 minutes, and that is the record. They were exhausted. No water, no food, and in one of the most isolated areas of Australia. Not long after, 3 Aboriginal men appeared from Drysdale Mission. They gave them brackish water to drink. The following day, the mission lugger arrived and rescued the 11 stranded airmen. 5 days later, they were back in Fenton, and they would have a story to tell, wouldn't they? Not one aircraft or airman had been lost on this raid. The Aboriginals knew that in 4 weeks, those salt pans would be flooded. The race was on to repair and recover Shady Lady. A replacement nose wheel and fuel were walked in. 2 volunteer airmen flew the B-24 out. Lieutenant Colonel Craig left the Air Force in 1946, decorated with a well-deserved DFC. He died in 1998. On the 14th of August 2011, 68 years to the day after Shady Lady crash-landed, Mrs. Craig and her daughter presented a plaque in Columbaroo to remember, acknowledge and to thank the traditional owners of this land for grateful assistance, gallant efforts and unwavering support. The wheel tracks from Shady Lady can still be seen today in this area, now designated a National Trust Heritage Site. As for Balikpapan, it continued to operate, and it wasn't until July 1945 that the area was retaken by invasion. It had been under Dutch rule for 350 years. However, the following month, 2 days after the Japanese surrender, Indonesia proclaimed its independence and Balikpapan was Indonesian again. Thank you for watching.